You cannot feel the meaning of unity without knowing that when one gains, all must gain. When anyone loses, all will suffer loss.
Now, can we hold in our mind, let's say, the awareness of those who flew the airplanes into the Twin Towers? And see in them what we see in each other sitting here at this table. Can you think for a moment of the hundreds of German people who were involved in the Holocaust, and see in them exactly what you think you saw in the 6-odd million Jews who were killed?
If I thought from there that it was real, I would think there'd be no way out of this.
There would be no justification for forgiveness at all.
No.
If it were real.
Right.
But if it is real, is there a justification for judgment?
That would be like saying, is there a justification for insanity?
Same. So would there be or not? But you see, just as we're doing right here, right now, as we're processing what that means to us in relationship to our history, we're deciding whether or not we can change the world. Because that's what it's going to take. It is going to take a reversal of the judgments, the ideologies that we have held, to give us something other than those to begin to value. And if I can think of all those who seem to participate both ways, as simply, as Tom pointed out, first of all, characters in the story, and secondly, as extensions of myself, can I honestly feel something that pulls me out of this rut and offers me a different way to see? There are so many beliefs bubbling up in our perception that control us in so many different ways than they would appear to. That we need, it is very helpful for us to take a look at what some of these real deep beliefs are and really come to grips with how we would see them differently now with the understanding that we have now being so different. Instead of just allowing them to lie there unchallenged. It's amazing how many times, if we really stop to take a look at it, that our first reactions and responses to people and what people do are almost always negative. The first and most common question the ego asks was, if I become defenseless, what about you? How can I depend on you changing if I change?
How can I trust you if I'm defenseless?
The point is that if you are a part of me, I cannot change without you changing. That's what I like to refer to as this dance that we do It's always a perfect mirror. The one that we are dancing with is always perfectly accommodating. If we need to feel hateful, they're going to serve that purpose for us beautifully. And if we want to be loved, they will do that. The ego's first defense against attempting to become defenseless is that you would not also become defenseless, and so it would surely suffer some loss. There is no way to logically appeal to the ego's perception why this would not happen. It does not yet believe we are joined in mind and consciousness. It cannot see that our desires and fears are the same for all of us. It cannot acknowledge that we move together toward the same goal, regardless of what our perception may be. Think for a moment about how our perception controls everything in our worldly experience. And then for another moment, just be aware that that perception is not a reflection of who you are. To know this requires that we take a step in trust. Forgive yourself for what the ego has condemned your brother for. Ask to see that what you want, he wants as well. And feel the bond that comes to replace what you thought once was an irreconcilable grievance. When I can want for you what I want for me, I have eliminated the idea of differences in my mind. And that is so important. That is such a key piece in our healing process. And it's why you've heard me say so many times how much more important it is when you think of something that would be satisfying to you, to think of that being satisfying, a gift, if you will, that you can offer everyone.
For there to be any hope of unity, we cannot want for one to gain while another seems to lose.
And that, of course, is the whole thought behind our system of justice. And we deprive someone of something as a punishment for what they have done. And then we wonder why it hasn't changed.
My intention that he be so sick, I don't think that. I don't look on him as being sick. You know. So I do believe that when you do create your own reality, that's what we're doing.
In that regard, honey, the thing that makes it less obvious to recognize is that where George may be doing the dance with you, his part of the dance with you, and being sick, you are doing your dance with the unreality of the situation in perhaps some other form entirely. But one form of an illusion doesn't need to match another form that is equally of the illusion. All expressions of what is untrue are the same.
Regardless of degree.
Degree or form, whatever it may look like. Some of us do our thing with sickness. Others do it with relationship or lack of financial stability or you name it. because the reason we've chosen them is that they're so important to us, the form that we pick. So it's never easy to let it go, just because we don't want it anymore.
Yeah.
But let's try to remember what it is, who it is that asks, and who it is that answers.
Oh,
When you connect the two, then you can't legitimately say, I didn't hear. Well, you can say, I didn't hear, but you can't say he didn't speak.
yeah.
What I find to be the biggest help is to not have an expectation that something is coming to me from another source, but to ask the question from the point of view of saying, all right, this is the truth of myself that I am asking to share with me. And so it's already there, and I don't have to have some kind of expectation that something special is going to happen. This is simply me answering me.
See, I can do that. I separated the Holy Spirit from me.
Now it's hard to hear.
Oh, yeah.
Now mostly it's impossible to hear. Yeah.
Separated it out.
Yeah. So maybe we try it a different way. And as Linda said, try not to have any expectations about how that's going to come, because it will come in whatever way you are, in that moment, whatever way you are best able to accept it is the way it's going to come to you. And the other thing that's a big help for me is that sometimes I will ask something and my mind is going in a lot of different directions and I don't hear a thing. So, but I do know that I am being told that what I'm asking for is there for me. And so I trust that in some other unguarded moment, it's going to come and I'm going to know it. So if you can build that kind of habit of awareness, then you just kind of stand by and you could be doing almost anything. And suddenly here comes a thought into your mind and you say, oh my God, that's what I asked about yesterday. But it can happen that way.
I took it as, signs that, okay, this is happening to you because you're not in the moment. So, here, it's right in your face. You need to be aware. Is that?
I think that's a perfect example.
Okay.
Because it teaches us immediately to ask. That's the best part of what you just explained. That you were aware enough, present enough to say, whoops, something's escaping me here, what is it?
Yeah.
Because recognizing that we're always connected, that we're always being, well, not to totally bore you, but back to lesson 135. What could you not accept if you but knew? He's trying to tell us that the opportunity to hear, to be in the presence of this other consciousness is always with us, always functioning. The only alternative, the only thing that is not given is whether or not we are listening. So here you're saying, oh, what is it that I'm not hearing? And every time we do that, then of course, or when we do that enough that it becomes our habit, then we do hear.
Perhaps you have misunderstood his plan for you because he would never offer you pain. But your defenses did not let you see his loving blessing in every step you ever took. While you were making plans for death, he was preparing you for eternal life. it goes with the idea he's always there in every step we take.
Absolutely. And I particularly like the line where he says, well, you make plans for death. Do we recognize that that's what our plans are leading us to?
Not usually, but there's no question about it.
No, there really isn't any question.
What does that mean?
What does that
What's a
mean?
plan for death?
Any plan or any thought that leads us to a place where we are not in recognition of the whole undivided self is a plan or a thought that leads us into the realm of separation. And that's the plan for death. One of the ways that Brother tries to convince us that we can access this, what he calls real world, is by referring to it as this world forgiven. So when we see the judgment and so forth that we impose upon the world, we come to recognize the only thing we're seeing is our own perception fed back to us. But if we stop judging it, if we accept not the goings-on of the world, but if we accept the one who seems to be dreaming, see, that's the difference. And that's why most people misunderstand when we talk about acceptance. They think we're talking about behavior. Behavior it's actually irrelevant. Because behavior is always an effect of something else. So what we're trying to learn to do is to accept ourselves, primarily, in the dream that we are not ourselves. Now, just for a moment, I don't think I've ever found anything more helpful, challenging at times, but helpful, than when, Lord, I don't know, 25 years ago, Brother said, when I said, what's the shortcut that I can use to get to seeing the truth? And he said, accept everyone's interest being exactly the same as yours. Now, I got to tell you, in the beginning, that can be pretty challenging. Because you first of all start off by relying upon the ego's evaluation of what his interests are. And so immediately what that brings up is, my God, here's a mass murderer. His interests are the same as mine? So that can lead you down a path, that's totally irrelevant. But why it is so important, or what it teaches you to do, is to acknowledge the importance of always going to the God Self and saying, show me what I'm seeing here. Tell me what this is really all about. Because I really don't have a clue. Now, as you are helped to see what your brother really wants, can you then see that his interests are identical to yours? You see, that's why he tells us, don't be deceived, so constantly be deceived by the form of someone's experience. Because all of the forms are alike in the end. They all have the same outcome. So they are all alike. What that means is that what we want then is always the same. We want to know, everyone wants to know that they are loved. That's all. However it looks, that's what we're after. So, is that what I want? Yes, that's what I want. So my interest and yours are always identical. So if you can try to boil it down to that each time, you will be really quite surprised, I think, of how that helps to lead you away from the need to judge. I remember him saying to someone once, when they questioned that, he said, you cannot truly forgive someone and fail to see the real world. So that's something to think about.
Brother said that.
I would think that what he, well, I think it's probably pretty obvious. What he meant was when we let go of our judgment, we connect. We recognize the presence of what love is. And that's what the real world is all about. The interesting thing about this is that we are in a state of mind based upon the reality of separateness. And so when we wonder about what other people see, that means that their mind is separate from our mind. But if we recognize first and foremost that that was just a theory, not a truth, that in reality we all share the same mind, in reality we all share the same consciousness, then the only thing different there is for you to see than what I see is how I interpret differently than you do. And that's what we call the form. That's what brings about a form. But the one of it is exactly the same. There could be a thought in the middle of this table, and we each look at that thought and say, oh, I know what that means, and we give it a meaning. And we create then an experience based upon that meaning. We could all give it a different meaning, but the thought itself was unchanged. And in the outcome of each of the different meanings that we gave it, they would all be the same. The outcome of the experience of each person would be identical.
Even though we all see it differently?
Absolutely. Well, let's make it real simple, Pat, and look at it this way. What is the ultimate outcome of the world?
Chaos.
Hmm?
Chaos.
Chaos and what? Yes, chaos and what?
Separateness.
And death.
Death.
You know anybody that's gotten out alive?
You might be the first one.
I hope. That would be wonderful. You could take us all with you. But as I say, in its most simple form, that is the ego's outcome of every experience. Because that is the ultimate proof that the basis for the experience, which is guilt, ego, sin, and separation, is real. Death is the outcome of sin and separation. And therefore, death is the outcome of our experience of what sin and separation creates. So, it's the same. Every one, every form, every meaning we give every thought ultimately ends up there. Jesus tells us, if you would like to change your experience of the world, simply change the purpose that you give it. In other words, change the meaning of that thought. Change it from having a purpose of serving sin and separation, to serving forgiveness. Change it from serving hate and allow it to serve love. And by changing the purpose, changing the meaning, you will change the experience.
That's one I don't know how many times a day now I've been using for months, is that statement in the Course, asking the Holy Spirit, take this from me and look on it, judging it for me. Let me not see it as a sign of sin and death, nor use it for destruction. Teach me how not to make of it an obstacle to peace, but let you use it for me to facilitate its coming.
That's so beautiful, Tom. So that our consciousness, the ego consciousness, right now is in the process of letting go of its belief. Do you know how you can prove this to yourself? It's not by looking at the news. It's by stepping back and asking yourself how you see it. And if you see it differently, that's all the proof you need that the change is happening in consciousness. Now, I say that to try to show you how important it is to see yourself as being a part of this consciousness. Of not just recognizing you will see it out there and then believe it in here, because that ain't ever going to happen. Each of us has got to see it in here and recognize that's why it's happening seemingly out here. It all starts in here. So, if you want to know what's happening in consciousness, look at what's going on with you. You're it.
We're like scientists working in the laboratory of our own life.
And isn't that, Brian, what all the scientists are finding about everything they discover anyway? Their results of what they're finding are what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Same as us. It's all part of this unfolding that I'm talking about.
That gives a totally different meaning to seek and you shall find. Because I always thought that meant seek God.
Well, ultimately it does, yeah.
But I never thought of it the way you just said. We'll find what we're looking for.
Always. It's the only thing our perception is capable of seeing. We were sitting around our living room in Kauai one night, and I was still channeling, and somebody asked, Brother, science had just discovered a new galaxy. Lord knows how many eons of light years away. So they asked Brother the question. They said, okay, let's get to the bottom line of this. Out beyond all the farthest of all of the galaxies, all of them, even the ones undiscovered, how far is it? You know what his answer was?
A thought?
How long does it take you to think about it? In other words, it's not out there. Let me say, first of all, intention is inordinately important. It is also circular in nature. And by that I mean that it is not defined by a specific thought. It is defined by a generality of belief. So to pick a thought and say, I'm not going to think that thought anymore because I don't like the effects of it.
That's what happened.
You see? You've got to get to the cause of the belief. And here again, the simplicity of what he teaches us, I think, is amazing. Because he tells us there isn't anything in your belief that didn't originate from the thought that sin was real. That's it. That's the Big Bang. Literally. Literally, that's the Big Bang in consciousness. The thought that went through our mind that something was real that actually was not. And it seemed to take what even science recognizes as a cohesive matter and explode it, fragment it, make it all different. Isn't it amazing how symbolic that is? So, it's that Big Bang that was literally just a little pop. And the only place that it happened was in our mind.
I think for me, now that I'm starting to recognize the uncomfortable feeling of a thought, that I can take it and recognize that it's my guilt, my unconscious guilt and feeling of separation, and I can hand it over to the Holy Spirit and ask the Holy Spirit to take it from me, because I do not want to believe that this is the truth about me anymore. I want to believe the lessons in the Course text, that I am the light of God. That is my only function here. And that can really change things fast.
What you're doing, honey, each time you take in one of those lessons, is that you are taking that belief structure and pulling it apart, so that what lies outside that belief structure finds a way into your awareness. That's why all of the lessons, all of the different theories that he talks about in the Course are so important, because each one of them breaks up the nucleus of that belief that says this is what's true and this is what's real, and then that one of those lessons will say, no, there is something else. And you see then the mind, another crack appears. And when the crack appears, what the crack was trying to hold out becomes apparent. What was there within the mind that we had tried to wall off and protect ourselves from is exposed. In other words, I had never believed, I had never really understood what Brother tells us when he says, your perception shows you nothing but what you already believe is true. But boy, once you've seen it, once you've seen outside the box of your perception, it's pretty hard for you to go back and believe that there is something about your perception that can get you anywhere, except where you've already been. I've added, let me just read 2 lines here. This is my edit book, and if I ever get around to editing this book, this will be in the next book. Added on to that what you just finished reading. Even the concepts of galaxies is too limited to contain. They are all abstractions, different and apart from you. How can you know and experience something if it is not a part, if you do not see it as a part of what you are? This is how we bridge perception. Perception is based upon projection. In other words, I put it out here and disconnect myself from it. But by doing that, then I have limited, worse than that, I have given up my ability to know it. If it is not a part of me, if it is out here, if it is you, and not a part of myself, then I have given up my ability to know it. Only when I accept something as part of me am I free to know it. Everything else is just an abstract understanding. It comes back to me when I read that just now, that the sentence, and I know everyone that I allow myself to love, that's when I began to experience the rest of this world smiling. It was like, you see, it just changes everything. Yeah, you want to go ahead, Mary?
I wasn't aware if there were or were not beings I could identify. It was more an awareness of recognition rather than physical sight. But I slowly came to realize there is no one here I did not know. I would have expected to find those from my past, but somehow there was a bond with everyone. It came to me that my awareness of knowing others has been limited by my restricting the awareness of myself to the image of a single being, isolated from others. I then realized this recognition of knowing is all about loving. Being free means having no defenses, no reason to withhold love. And I know everyone I allow myself to love. With this realization, I was aware that everywhere, without further explanation, this whole world is smiling. That was a knowing far beyond words, a feeling of oneness I cannot literally describe.
It comes back to me when I read that just now, that the sentence, and I know everyone that I allow myself to love, that's when I began to experience the rest of this world smiling. It was like, you see, it just changes everything.
If you had found the ones from your past, it would have been your perception of them from an ego standpoint.
Exactly. And I wouldn't have known them.
You wouldn't have known. But they were there.
I would have known their story, but I wouldn't have known them.
Good insight.
You know, I have to share this with you. I read this again this morning, and I'm listening and feeling as we read it now. And if I could just wish anything for you, I would say, oh God, if you could just experience this. Just be in it. And I ask myself, why aren't you always there? I don't know.
You are feeling love right now?
Oh,
Or you're talking about an intense love?
yeah. And when you do, believe me, there isn't anything else.
I wonder if we couldn't all just open up and breathe that in around the table.
Well, I would hope. This is in your mind until you stop projecting those dark places onto other things, and they're usually little critters. Predominantly, our words are of a perception that isn't true. So it's pretty hard for the words to try to convey something that is true. So then we go or we try to communicate via the feelings that don't need words. How hard is it to communicate to someone that you love them? And how hard would it be to try to convey the fullness of that feeling with the inadequacy of words?
Yes.
And yet we've all been with someone that perhaps we've never even exchanged a word with, that we recognize that they were in the presence of love itself. So, yes, feelings are how we truly communicate.
I just learned today that one of my granddaughters is, because I didn't know it before, is suffering from depression.
I'd like to suggest that she doesn't really suffer from depression, but what she's really suffering from is her belief that it would be impossible for her to be loved. And if you were to go back in her relationship, particularly with her mom, that you would find that the two of them together are very close in this belief. So it's no coincidence that they are together and can best work out their differences or their seeming differences together. She has, among others, but she has a very strong belief that she was unwanted as a child. That's the part that connects her to her mom. So if you could just kind of maybe pass that along to her mom and some words of encouragement to let her know that that isn't true would be very helpful. But at the same time, that's going to open up some stuff for her mother as well. Because it's not a total miscommunication. So I just offer that as an insight, a place to begin, let's say, the healing process. The lovely thing is that most of the time, when we look at what we think is our greatest challenge, it also becomes or contains the greatest potential for our healing. So it comes from both, the significance of it comes from both directions. In fact, what is it that Brother says in the Course? The most holy place on earth is the place where an ancient hatred has become a current love.
If there is no time,
You'd be in the
who
now.
are we? How would we? What would the now be? The ego now? Would it be the spirit now? What would it be?
There's an easy way not to understand that, but an easy way to bring a feeling experience of it to yourself. And that is to recognize that the one thing that closely parallels the truth in our world is our desire to love. So whenever you have the desire to love, you are experiencing a moment that is timeless. Because it didn't originate within the dream. It doesn't come from within the dream at all. and its experience is not had within the dream. So it's all pre-dream, so to speak. So just recognize that in that moment when you feel a desire to love, you are out of time. I remember one time, a long time ago, when after I had become familiar with experiencing Brother's presence, and I said to him during the course of the conversation, as we began a conversation, I said, "Boy, you were really quick to come this time." In other words, referring to how long it took me to focus on him versus how long it took me at that time. And his comment back to me was, "Where do you think I had to come from?"
I came to the conclusion years ago in doing this kind of spiritual work that it's the women that are going to lead us along the way, because they're way more open to it, generally speaking, than men are.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. I think men are as open to it and as accepting of it as women. But men being, or portraying more of the male traits, are more apt to be pursuing it by themselves and not within a group, which is how women more are apt to pursue it. And so I feel so gratified to see the groups that I'm affiliated with, who come together pretty much, as I say, equally split. There was a lady who joined us Sunday morning when we were at our friend's home, who has been a long time course student, and who was expressing an incredible amount of frustration with her life. I guess she's been studying the course for about 5 or 6 years. And she said, she said, "I'm not going to quit, but nothing has changed. I read and I read and I read and nothing has changed." I said, "Give me a specific example." So she said this and this. What was it about her mother or something? I said, "What did you do?" "Well, I remembered what the Course said about this and this." "Well, what did you do?" "Well, what is there to do?" The point is exactly what we're saying. You literally have to change your mind about the concept of right and wrong. You literally have to do something differently in your thinking in order to have your thinking change. Otherwise, it's going to just plod merrily along, being very happy to absorb everything that you think you're understanding. But nothing is going to change until you decide to change the way you perceive what's going on.
Another friend of mine says, if you keep thinking what you always thought, you'll keep getting what you always got.
I think every one of us would like to be very clear about how we can be in the world and not of it. In other words, we don't expect of ourselves to be immediately free of all of the world's precepts, of all of the adventures, the stories that are going on in the world. And yet we do have this great desire to be in a loving place, to be in a peaceful place. So how is that possible when the rest of this seems to be going on out here? Well, Brother says, look, what you recognize is that everything that you see happening is an opportunity to accomplish everything that you think you want.
In the illusion?
In the illusion. So, what is that saying to me? Do I know how to do that? Of course I don't. But I am told that there is a presence within my mind that will take everything I perceive and show me how to use it in a different way. So if I'm watching a documentary and I'm seeing something that upsets me, the forgiveness process is to ask the question, how do I see this differently? How do I see it differently? Not how do I change it, but how do I see it in another way that brings me a sense of peace? Well, here's what happens. You go to the God self, and the God self says, I'm going to use some real generalities here. The God self says, now remember, the thing you want most is to recognize that you are loved. You may not even recognize that as what you want, but there is nothing that you want more than that. So let me show you how to take a circumstance where somebody seems to be disagreeing with you, and you seem to be angry at them, and turn that around. You recognize that what you are witnessing is someone who does not feel good about themselves. Doesn't have anything to do with you, doesn't have anything to do with the finances of the world, doesn't have anything to do with anything except here is a person who is expressing a thought of themselves of which they are very dissatisfied. In other words, they're saying, I am unlovable.
It's like crying for help.
That's the call for love. And so the Holy Spirit says, whether you're watching it on television or whether the person is sitting across the counter from you, you go to a place where you connect and you say, in the presence of the God self, you say, let me teach you that you are loved. Let me just demonstrate to you that no matter what seems to be happening, you're okay. You're really okay, and I just happen to love you. And you watch how your mood changes. You watch how the anger totally disappears. Because you see, you are recognizing, you are doing exactly the thing that you want to have for yourself.
Setting in love.
Giving what you want to receive is how you recognize that you can have it. Giving what you want to receive is how you recognize that you can have it. Now, the individual cases will come and go, and they'll all seem to be different. But essentially, that's what's going to happen in each and every case. We're going to be called upon to recognize what it is that we really want. Not to get caught up to think that what I really want is this person to agree with me, or what I really want is to feel financially secure. But to recognize what I really want is to know, really know that I am loved. And I would suggest to you, one of the most beautiful meditations that you can have is to take some problem that you think you have into a meditation and just ask the God self to show you one thing. Show you how God loves you right in that moment. And sit with that feeling of being loved and try to find the problem. you can't find it because it's not there. You've identified the other real problem and you've solved it. What does it bring up when you say, I am the light of the world? Take away the words. Let that go to the very gut and ask yourself how it feels to simply acknowledge that you are the light of the world. This is where change can occur. Not just reading the words, but going inside, finding that place where we do disbelieve, saying, show me, if this is true, show me. Show me how to act and think from this place instead of the other place. You keep in mind, we're not talking about the ego person. We're not talking about associating the person with the story that he's telling about himself. That's what gets us in all of the trouble to begin with.
Yes.
What we're talking about is finding the God self.
In them.
Right.
You see, yes. But don't worry about this. If you find it in you, you're going to find it in them, and if you find it in them, you're going to find it in you because there isn't any difference. It's the same thought that keeps you from seeing it either place. So don't worry about it. Either one works. That's why he tells us that the way we can do this is to see the other person calling for love. Because that takes you immediately out of their story. Their story would never suggest that they were calling for love. But for you to see it that way, you've already transcended the story. You've already set the story aside. Said there's something else here that I want to see. And the reason that you can do that is because that's what you want. That's what you want. That's what I want. It's what everyone in the world wants. And it just takes practice. One whole heck of a lot of practice. But you do it, and you do it, and you do it again. And one day, without ever discovering it, you'll look back and say, well, wasn't that nice? You did it automatically. It's only our misperceived thoughts about ourselves that seems to stand between us and what is true. Remember what we were saying? Everything exists in the mind of God. All awareness of truth and love, of peace and harmony are there. Already there. We try to overlay another thought on all of that. And we try to divorce ourselves from seeing that by practicing what we preach. So if we remove our thought that has overlaid the thought of God, what's left?
The thought of God, love.
The thought of God is all that's left. So we don't have to try to do anything. Just stop making the judgment that we have made.
What is the judgment?
Well, it could seem to be about anything. But the only judgment we ever really make is that there's something wrong with us. And we've projected that onto the world, and everywhere we see it, then we judge it. Projection is actually the experience of separation. And projection, the need for projection occurs because we feel the thought of sin about ourselves is too difficult to deal with. But we rationalize that if I can make you a little more guilty than me, then I'm a little more okay than I was before.
Mm-hmm.
If I could just get God to judge you or to see you being a little bit worse than me, that'll satisfy me. That's projection.
Then you don't have to-
That's a judgment.
Now they're the bad guy.
Mm-hmm, that's my judgment.
Right.
Okay.
And you get to still keep your own self-judgment.
Now how do you feel at one with this part of yourself that you have just projected that onto? See, it's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the purpose of judgment, is to reinforce the need for separation.
Mm-hmm.
Keep you separate, keep them and their badness
Mm-hmm.
separate from you. Even what modern therapy has not recognized in dealing and treating that is that in each case, every time we make a projection, and they tell us to go through the forgiveness, teach us to go through the forgiveness process, to see this other person in a different way, without recognizing projection, we fail to recognize that we have just compounded our self-judgment. Even if I find a way to forgive you, to overlook what you have done, I have still compounded my self-judgment by allowing that judgment in and of itself to serve the purpose of separation. So we've always got to bring it home and say, it's not you. That's not who I'm judging. It's always about me, and it's about what I think I see. More specifically, what it means is that she feels guilty. Not what she's trying to do to you, but how she sees herself. That's how each of us expresses
that's on the...
our opinion or our feelings. Okay? It's always a projection of how we see ourselves. And then it's like...
But that's what I tell her, and that's exactly how I've gotten into trouble.
Why would you tell her that?
Well, why would I tell her that?
Yeah. Did you want her to feel guilty? When we recognize, for instance, the difference between an attack and a call for love, and we remind someone that they are calling for love, I would suggest to you that it's probably another version of an attack. If you see a call for love, you'll simply respond to it in a loving way. But you won't find a need to use it in a particular way to justify your own feelings or your own behavior.
Yeah. So in a way, actually, in a way, I'm like defending myself. In a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Course has a very succinct way of describing that. Every time you feel a need to defend yourself, you are attacking.
Yeah.
Because a best, we always like to say that the best defense is a good offense. And so we just use the ego's version of how do you respond to a call for love? Well, you tell somebody they're wrong, of course.
Yeah. And that my safety lies in my defenses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a tough one.
It
Practice
is.
all the time.
It is. It's pretty hard to turn on the news and see something that would seem to justify that. And that's another thing that's always helpful to remind ourselves. don't expect to look at the news. Don't expect to look at anything that you see in the world and see some justification for what is true. Because the thoughts that make the world are not true. So you can't find any evidence there.
A friend of mine says that she lived for many years on the corner of rationalization and justification.
Yeah, there's a lot of traffic on that corner too.
Yeah.
So the little irritations of relationship, and that's a form of fear, but hard to see and hard to, but I should pay attention to it and reflect on it. So,
Sam, it's the reason it's so important for us to learn not to rely on our own perception. Why it's so important to make it a habit that when, even when we feel perfectly fine, make it a habit of checking in, going to the God self constantly and saying, where am I? What's going on with me here? Learning to become so sensitive to those subtle little feelings you were describing, that the first thing we do is to ask.
I love my wife, we have a great time together, but certain things irritate you over time. You can't help it. And
Well, you can't actually.
Well, how? Because I don't want to berate her, and I don't.
No. No, but that's my whole point when I say you can. You can if you're going to rely on the ego's response.
Right.
There isn't any way then.
Right.
Then it is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just reading this morning, reviewing lesson 1, I believe it's 199. I am not a body, I am free. And it says in the last part of the lesson there, it reminds us that the ego's mind will never find justification for forgiveness. But it says, if you learn to rely upon the God Self, the Holy Spirit, you'll never even have to think about forgiving. Because the mind that you are using is so much attuned to the loving space of the God Self that everything there becomes very natural. We're trying to learn that so-called presence, we call it a presence, of course it's just us, but that presence, that awareness that God placed in our mind, is what our mind is like when we remove the need to feel guilt, to feel separate. That's what's there. That's all that's left. So it's the practice. The practice is wanting to come from that place more than the place of guilt. The line that in that lesson that I was trying to remember is, it says, I will hear the voice for God, and that is the only voice that I will obey. We feel so drawn the other direction.
Well, it's hard for me, if I'm like in the morning, if I'm meditating for a while, I'm praying for a while, then I can hear. But then I go out. And
I have a little thing I use with myself. That when I find myself thinking that it's difficult, if I were on the streets of New York and I would feel that the vibration, so to speak. And I said, wow, this is really hard. I'm just actually reliving one time I was in New York and going through this. They were having a peace march, and I was observing the peace march. I was observing how everybody in the peace march was so angry. And so brother like taps me on the shoulder, and he says, instead of thinking that this is difficult, think instead of what you really want. And I knew the only reason that it was difficult was because there was a part of me that was joining in that, was relating to that. Because why? Because I wanted it. It was natural. It felt good. It always feels good, yes. To get the ego involved and judge and say they're right and I'm wrong. No. Wow, doesn't that feel good? Yes. So it's what we want. And it's learning to be honest enough with yourself to say, if I didn't want this, I wouldn't have it. I'll tell you, there is nothing that will free you quicker than that.
And I couldn't hit the ball. And I asked myself, what do I want? And I wanted to leave. I wanted peace, and I wasn't getting peace there.
Those are good things, honey. Those are good things to have happen to us. Because they bring us right smack face to face with what we need to do. I can really sympathize with what you're saying.
Sorry.
I played golf last Saturday, Friday, and I hadn't played for I hadn't felt capable of playing for about 5 or 6 weeks. And I discovered when I was swinging the golf club that I got very lightheaded and very dizzy, and wow, strange things were happening.
Yeah.
I sat down and I asked my inner self, does this mean that my playing golf is finished? It really would be hard for me.
Yes.
And it said, the answer was, perhaps. And what came over me was the awareness that if I wasn't ready to give it up, it wouldn't happen. But when I am ready to give it up, I don't need to have something physical stand in my way, which is what was happening. So it was a nice moment for me to be aware, remind myself again that nothing's happening except what I want. So you ask yourself, what does this really mean? Why am I getting so upset? Why should I not make the shot that I would almost always make? But honey, there's always a reason. Always. There is never an accident. Nothing ever happens by chance.
I said, well, I must need love, because all the girls were hugging me and telling me they loved me, and it's just a game. And
don't just wait for that, darling. Don't just wait for that.
No.
Take your time. Go inside and say, what is this really about? What is this really showing me? What is it that I want to look at? Let it be a good thing.
I know. I wasn't going to share this, but...
Yeah. Challenges can always be opportunities if we will see them as a good thing.